This happened in a beach in the Philippines about 2 years ago. Me and my friends decided to take a quick vacation to let off some steam from work. On our first night, we decided to just drink outside our hotel room. We got a little tipsy and one of my friends decided to take a walk on the beach and try to meet some other tourists there. I had a bad feeling about what might happen to him since he was already drunk, so I decided to join him together with another friend. He said he wanted to visit the rock formations, which is a known hookup spot since the place was dark and there were no other establishments on that part of the shoreline. It stretches to about half the length of a football court with pure darkness. I was reluctant about the idea of him going in there, but he was adamant. So I agreed as long as he comes back after a few minutes. Me and my other friend waited on the last bar on the end of the shoreline before the dark area starts. Me and my friend were talking about something when we heard a gut-wrenching scream. It sounded like our friend, so we decided to rush in. The only light at that time was coming from the moon, so my friend decided to pull out his phone and turn on the flashlight. We asked around and saw some people hooking up on the sand. We asked if they saw our friend, giving them descriptions on what he might look like, but they said that they never saw him. Our hearts were pounding at this point because we don't know what might have happened to him. We ran until we reached the end of it. There is a huge rock on the shore about 15 feet tall, with a local guy standing on top of it. We asked him, "Have you seen our friend?" He was about my height, wearing a black shirt. He said, "Was he gay?" I didn't see the relevance in the question, but I said yes. He might have went over there in the mangroves, and then pointed to a darker part of the beach filled with mangroves. Using only the light on the phone, we tried searching the small area. It looked like a tiny shelter with the overgrown plants acting as the roof. When we turned back, the guy on the top of the rock is already walking towards us. And then two more guys popped up behind him, probably hiding behind the huge rock. "He wasn't there," I said. Then the guy who was on the rock did a karate chop on my friend's arm for him to let go of his phone, which was successful, as the phone rolled in the sand. My friend was able to grab the phone, and that's when he shouted, "Run." I was confused with what had just happened, that I just started running after he said run, without actually knowing what we were running for. And that's when it hit me that this was an ambush, that we were led into the mangroves for them to steal my friend's phone. I was running for a few seconds when I started feeling the weight on my feet. The sandals that I was wearing got really heavy because I wasn't aware that I had been running on wet sand. My friend took off his flip-flops for him to run faster. I wanted to do the same, but then I realized that my sandals were strap-on, so I just continued running. I could hear the guys chasing us saying, "Stop, we were just joking." I didn't want to fall for what they said, so I continued running, my legs starting to feel numb since I'm not really an athletic person. There came a point where I just wanted to stop since I don't have anything valuable with me. But then I thought that it could be a reason for them to harm me, so I ran with all my might until we reached the first bar. My friend was already there catching his breath when we saw the friend we were looking for, laughing and talking to the locals. We wanted to punch him for what he had just put us through, but he had no idea what just happened to us, so we let it go. Our vacation still went through, and we still go to that island from time to time, but we vowed to never go on that side of the beach ever again. Now, that part of the beach has already been closed to tourists, so to those guys who tried to mug us on the beach, please, let's not meet. This happened years ago when I was maybe 17. I'm 23 now. My family was on vacation. We were staying at a resort in South Carolina on the beach. The resort had two buildings, one directly by the beach and one that was across the street. We were staying in the building across the street. My cousin, my sister, and myself decided to go and sit on the beach one night. It was probably about 9 p.m. There were usually a few people out walking or playing around. On this night, there wasn't anyone out there except a few couples walking by randomly. We sat down on some tiles and watched the water from a good distance. We were chatting and telling stories. We noticed a man walking around us. Going to the water, back to the walkway leading up to the resort, back and forth. He got closer and closer to us until he was walking so close that he stepped on the edge of our towels. He was a big man with shaggy blonde hair. My sister suggested that we go down to the water. He followed us. At this point, we knew that he was following us, so we decided to leave. We started up the wooden walkway back to our building. Like I said, our building was across the street. To get to it, you had to pass through a little alleyway. The alley was well lit and the street was relatively busy, but there is a parking garage adjacent to the alleyway. My head immediately told me not to walk past that parking garage. We were facing the alleyway, about to walk through. This guy is right behind us. I loudly said, "Hey, wait, let me beat off my sandals." We stopped and took our shoes and beat the sand out of them. The man passed us reluctantly, so close that he was almost touching us. I saw his eyes for the first time. He was definitely on something. His pupils looked messed up. His eyes were wide as saucers. He passed by us slowly and went where? Directly into the parking garage. I knew he was waiting for us. I said, "Run." We ran back over the wooden walkway and onto the beach. Through the sand to the next walkway, which led up to another building's pool area. He was behind us again, chasing us, running full force. We got into the pool area, and the man stopped. There was a woman cleaning, and we told her what had happened. She got hotel security, and a police officer asked us some questions and walked us back to our building. I was scarred by this experience for a while, and I will not go to the beach at night ever again without my very large and tough fiance by my side ever again. So creepy beach chaser, let's not meet again. Okay, so I live in rural Ireland, and the place I like to walk is a peninsula. So like a finger sticking out into the sea but wide. Its beach runs up both sides and is very isolated, so sometimes I see seals up the fop. Anyway, this happened to me yesterday. I'm a 29-year-old female and I was walking at the beach at the peninsula. I would go up one side and then back down the other. Anyway, as I'm walking up, I'm about a mile from the top. I note a man runs up behind me and up around the corner at the top and then back by me. I think, okay, cool, he's doing laps. But then when I get around the corner, like at the very end of the peninsula, he runs back up from behind me, but very close, like it's really wide there, and I could have reached out and touched him. Now that frightened me because it's a huge beach at the end, and I had headphones on, so it kind of startled me. But anyways, he keeps going on ahead of me, and I turn back facing the way that I came, and stand for a few minutes because that's where I see the seals usually. I turn around to keep going and I see the man standing on the dune facing me. He's climbed up on it, and he's a good bit ahead of me, and I think he's just looking at the ocean like me. But still, I feel like he's looking at me while I have my back to him, and I see him moving up onto the dune further. I try not to look at him, but I have sunglasses on and I keep him in my peripheral. And I see him crouched down and hide, right where I would have to climb and walk past to get over to the other side of the peninsula. The only reason that I could see him was because he had a high visibility vest on, and I could see some of it through the grass. I stop and I'm looking, and then after a minute or so, I see him stand up on the dune and just face me. He's wearing a runner's bandana and sunglasses, so I can't see exactly what he's looking at, but I'm stopped on the beach. He's standing on the dune and looking my way, and then he takes 2 steps like he's coming back my way. And I just ran back the way that I came. I had met my family walking the dog about 2 miles back, and I ran until I could see them. I was terrified, and I don't know why, but when I caught him crouching, I had like a primal fear, like it wasn't going to be good at all. And the really strange thing is, I never saw him come back down the beach, even though he was coming down the dune towards me. and there was no one around. So from around March 15th when the quarantine started, all the way up until the beginning of June, I didn't see my friends at all. Obviously, I could still talk to them online and stuff, but that got a bit old as time went on. So to keep myself from imploding in boredom, I decided to pick up a hobby I've been wanting to try for a while: urban photography. And not to seem entitled or whatever, but a lot of kids I go to school with really seem to like my photos. Being the only recognition that I'd ever got from people outside my circle of friends, you could see why I would want to continue this hobby. Each day after I finished my online schoolwork, I would hop on my bike and ride around the old, forgotten places of my town. There were no shortages of these, as the expansion of my town pretty much stopped in the 1990s. Now, as you would expect, many of these places are infamous amongst the teenagers, some of which being an abandoned hospital and an old mill in particular. But one such place that gets less recognition from youngsters is an old forgotten campground used primarily for Boy Scouts in the early 1940s. One day in mid-April, I decided to head down there and check the place out. The whole camp rests on a hill. At the base of the hill is a relatively popular town beach that features a very pleasant pond. But on the top of the hill is where the abandoned camp is, and that's where I was going to go. I pulled up to an old cabin and began taking pictures. Everything seemed pretty normal at first. I'd been coming here since I was about 7, so I knew the layout relatively well. Eventually, I made my way over to a multi-level brick building overflowing with moss. I later learned that this was apparently the old firehouse from back when the camp was in use. I snapped some cool pictures that I actually really liked, as I've always been fascinated with abandoned buildings. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed something on the ground, a new clean toothbrush. Thinking it was odd, I took a picture of it. Almost instantaneously, I heard what sounded like a short, low hum coming from the back of the firehouse. Kind of like when you try to give a quick sympathy laugh for an unfunny joke. With that, it was almost as if any thought of leaving had been put on pause in my mind. I crept quietly around to the back of the firehouse. To my intrigue, there was a great hole where I assumed a door frame used to be. I suddenly got a really uneasy feeling looking at this door. It didn't really feel like I was being watched. Quite the opposite, actually. I felt like I was seeing something that I shouldn't. I peered my head inside, and what I saw made me drop my phone. Inside, there had to be 25 middle-aged men, all skinny, shirtless, and with shaved heads. They were all laying on the floor, whispering quietly to each other. Almost all at the same time they stopped. The only one sitting up had raised a skinny finger to point at me. "You look good, kid," he said in a voice that made me think that he was the one who had made the noise earlier. "You look like you could be a star in Hollywood." He then threw something at me, a small black trash bag containing something I really didn't want to find out. I bent down quick and grabbed my phone and booked it out of there, leaving my bike at the firehouse. As the beach at the bottom of the hill wasn't open for the season yet, the camp was empty. I didn't encounter another person until I got almost half a mile away from that damn firehouse. Of course, the next day, I had to get my bike. I didn't want to tell my parents about the incident, so I had to make up some quick BS excuse as to why I was walking all the way back there. I was terrified to go anywhere near there again, but I had to get my bike back. Once I got there, I didn't hear anything from the men in the house. I anxiously crept back towards that door, and of course, nobody was there. I snapped a picture of the doorway, and I rode off on my bike. I don't know where those men are now, but I just hope that I don't ever bump into them again. This happened a few years ago, right before I deployed to the Middle East. I'm in the National Guard, so before we deployed, we had a train up at Fort Hood, Texas. After our training was finished, we got a 4-day pass. I was single, no kids, so I decided instead of going home, I would travel around Texas. After a few days in Austin, I wanted to see the Gulf, so I traveled to Rockport, Texas. I parked my rental about a 10-minute walk away from the beach since it was a nice day, and I don't mind walking. It was pretty quiet as it was about 9 a.m., but there was still quite a few people there. I was laying out and reading my Kindle when a heavily tattooed young guy walks up to where I was laying out, and he asked if he could leave his clothes near me while he takes a dip. I say sure. He goes in the ocean and I don't really think much of it. He comes out of the water about 10 minutes later and proceeds to lay down next to me and starts chatting. I kind of wanted to be left alone, but he seemed harmless, and I didn't want to be rude, so I talked with him for a bit. His name is Angel, and he said he lived about 30 minutes away. He tells me that he would have joined the military, but he spent time in prison. I don't ask for what. He tells me it was for some mix-up. This mix-up landed him 8 years. I try and direct the conversation to more harmless things, but he doesn't act like a lonely stranger, even a guy trying to hit on a girl. He's completely uninterested in anything except why I'm here and who I'm with. And then he starts getting really creepy. He keeps repeating back to me that, "You're really all alone. You came here by yourself. You're not with anyone." Alarm bells are ringing. I didn't actually phrase any of it quite like that, but he read between the lines. Note to future self, always pretend to be waiting for friends. I start stressing that I'm leaving that day. I wasn't. And that I'm in the military and have to be back soon or they'll consider me AWOL and start looking for me. True, but not for another 2 days when my pass is up. He pretty much ignores all of this, and I notice that we are both watching people walk by us carefully, if that makes sense. Luckily for me, it was getting more crowded and families were walking by us in pretty steady intervals. He starts asking me what kind of car that I drive, what hotel I'm staying in. He asks me where I parked. I tell him a rental, I'm leaving, and I don't remember where I parked. I've been creeped out for a while now, and I've been in some dangerous situations before, but I've never been more frightened than in broad daylight, surrounded by people talking with this creep. He then starts telling me about this party in his town later tonight and that I should come. I could meet all of his friends. He offers to drive me. Again, I bring up that I'm leaving, I'm in the military and all that jazz. He continues to be amazed that I'm here all by myself. He also tells me that he's parked right behind us, and that I want to see his car. No, I do not. I tell him that I'm comfortable where I'm at. He had also put on his cargo shorts that he took off for his ocean dip, and kept rubbing one of his pockets while he talked to me. There was definitely something in there. I doubt it was a gun, but this guy was scaring the hell out of me, and it made me wonder if he had a knife or something. Now I know it seems strange that I didn't just get up and leave, but this guy was making every hair in the back of my neck stand up, and I wanted to extract myself without pissing him off. Then after mentioning the party again, he says something even creepier. He looks at my legs and says, "I bet you can run for days." What the hell? There was zero context for this statement. We weren't even talking about working out, athletics, or the Olympics, fitness routines, or even military training. None of those topics came up ever the whole time that he was creeping me out. I look over and a family is walking by us fairly close, so I leapt up and I started gathering my stuff, telling him that I gotta go to the restroom and that I'll see him later. I power walk down to the water and walk along the beach in the opposite direction of my car, toward the pier where there are restrooms and snacks. He followed me the entire way while talking on his cell phone. I was walking on the beach while he was walking along the edge of the parking lot that ran parallel. Once I had reached the pier, I doubled back to where my car was actually parked. I watched him until he finally stopped following me. There is a small booth that the parking lot attendant sat in. I parked in the free lot behind her, but I stopped and told her the situation, described the car that I was getting into, which she could see from her booth. She agreed to make sure that I got in my car safely. A little paranoid since I was fairly certain that he had stopped following me, but just in case. I'm just glad the beach was fairly crowded.